Okay, so have you ever felt just completely fried by stress? You know that feeling, right? Mentally, emotionally, just exhausted. Well, what if it was actually possible to train your brain to be more resilient? Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating study that suggests you can do exactly that.
I mean, really think about that. What if burnout wasn't just this thing you had to suffer through, but something you could actively build a defense against? We're about to dive into some research that suggests a short, really targeted brain workout might just be the key. So, our story actually starts back in the 90s with a psychologist named Barry Sturman. He was working with these high performance jet pilots, and he was trying to figure out what their brains were doing when they were at their absolute best. And, maybe more importantly, what was happening in those moments right before they made a critical mistake. Now, to really get what he found, we just need a super quick rundown of three key brain waves. So, you've got beta waves, that's for active external focus. Think of it as your problem solving mode. Then there are alpha waves, which is a state of calm, relaxed readiness. And finally, theta waves, which are linked to inward focus, but also, and this is key, to fatigue and drowsiness. So here's what Sturman discovered. It was this incredibly clear three-step pattern. First, when a pilot was at peak performance, their brain would just cycle beautifully between focused beta for a task and then a brief dip into restful alpha right after. It's like work, then rest. But then, as the tasks got faster and more intense, there was no time for that little alpha respite. And that's when performance dropped. And finally, the brain would slip into this really distinct burnout profile, super high drowsy theta waves and very, very low alpha. Their brain was, for all intents and purposes, checking out. And this discovery was huge, because it didn't just identify a villain in our story, that lack of alpha, it also pointed to a potential hero. What if you could strengthen that alpha state? What if you could train the brain's natural reset button? Sturman gave this little alpha dip a pretty technical name, post-reinforcement synchrony. But, you can just think of it as the brain's way of giving itself a tiny reward, a little micro break right after it completes a challenge. He realized this wasn't just a nice to have. It was a biological necessity for staying sharp under extreme pressure. And he did not mince words about it. As this quote from his 1994 paper shows, he believed this alpha state was, quote, absolutely necessary for optimum performance. The bottom line is, without this mental reset, your performance will inevitably suffer. So all of this leads us to a really fascinating question. If this alpha state is so critical, can you actually train people to produce more of it? Like on command, even with their eyes wide open in a stimulating environment? Well, fast forward to the year 2000, and this paper gets published in the Journal of Neurotherapy. It laid out an experiment that put this exact idea to the test using a technique they called alpha immersion. The setup was surprisingly simple. They got 77 Army reservists to sit down for just 12 minutes. They watched a relaxation video on one screen, but on a second screen, they saw a live visual of their own alpha brainwaves. The whole goal was to see if, with that direct feedback, they could learn to consciously crank up that alpha activity. And the results? Well, they were not what you might expect from a typical relaxation exercise. They were much, much more interesting. Get this, after just 12 minutes, the targeted alpha waves shot up, and pretty significantly. But at the same time, those fatigue-related theta waves actually went down. And here's the real kicker. Their attentive, low beta waves also saw a small increase. These charts from the study just show it so clearly. On the left, you can see that big jump in alpha, a clear shift upwards for most people. And then on the right, you see the drop in theta, a definite move downwards. They were actively training their brains to move away from that burnout profile. And here is where it gets really counterintuitive and cool. The data showed a direct link. The more someone increased their calming alpha waves, the more their attentive low beta waves also increased. So this training wasn't just making people sleepy or zoned out. It was actually inducing a state of calm, focused alertness, literally the exact opposite of burnout. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? I mean, what does it all mean? It seems like this isn't just about relaxation. It's about actually rewiring our brains for better performance under pressure. I mean, look at how direct this is. The burnout profile that Sturman found was high theta and low alpha. The result of this 12-minute training was the exact inverse, decreased theta and increased alpha. It's a direct, measurable reversal of the brain state that's associated with performance decline.
The researchers suggest this kind of training builds something called cortical flexibility. Just think of it like agility training for your brain. It's the brain's ability to shift into the right gear for whatever the moment demands and then to bounce back more effectively from stress. This isn't just for pilots, it's for anyone who has to switch from deep focus on a project to suddenly dealing with an interruption.
And that really leaves us with a provocative final thought. In all these high-stress professions, we're talking surgeons, traders, teachers, parents, could a simple 12-minute brain workout like this one day become a standard tool for building resilience and for preventing burnout before it even gets a chance to start? The research definitely suggests it's a future worth exploring.